webinar session, which will all be about the different metals that are used in jewelry making. So tonight we will be discussing a few different topics. We're going to be looking at the different metals used in jewelry, the pros and the cons to each one, as well as a few different designs that work better with certain types of metal, and then just a few general cleaning tips and trade-in tips as well. So we're going to jump in to gold quickly. Gold and all its different colors. So we're going to start with yellow gold, and this is generally the color that people know about most. They refer to gold as, or yellow gold as gold, and a few people know that there are different carats in gold, whereas a few people don't. So if you look on the screen, you'll see a graph basically depicting the difference between 9 carat and 18 carat gold. These are just the two different caratage of gold that is used in South Africa. American jewelry uses 14 carat a bit more often. You also get 22 carat, and the word carat in terms of gold just refers to the purity of the metal. How many parts are pure gold, basically. So if we look at 9 carat, you'll see that it only contains 37.5% gold, and the rest is made up of alloys, which is needed to strengthen the metal to be able to make jewelry with it. Otherwise it will just bend spontaneously. And if we look at 18 carat, it is exactly double the amount of gold, which is 75% gold, and that means the alloys are much less in the gold structure.
If you had to put it into perspective, let's say your 9 carat ring weighs 10 grams on the scale. That means that only 3.75 grams of the complete 10 grams will be pure gold, and the other 6.25 grams will be mainly copper and silver, as indicated on the circular charts on your screen. Now the same with putting 18 karat gold into perspective is that 7.5 grams of the 10 grams will be pure gold, and only 2.5 grams will be alloys. Majority of that will be then copper and silver.
So we can have a look at the different colors of gold. This is all the different caratage or carats that we mentioned earlier, and depending on which device you're using, it might appear better, it might all look the same to you, but there is definitely a difference in color between 9 carat and 18 karat gold. 18 karat is much more yellow than 9 carat. The reason for that is it has a higher quantity of gold itself. So the next slide we're going to move over to is rose gold. You'll notice that the difference between rose gold and yellow gold is just the content of copper. Rose gold gets its color from copper, which gives it that rosy reddish color. With rose gold, because of the content of copper, it does, on a very technical scale, it is a bit more brittle. So do be careful with rose gold rings. You don't want to be too rough on your hands with them, as they might crack or even break a claw or something of that sort.
And the next one is quite interesting. Here we're going to move over to the white metals, where we've included sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Before we get to the next image of the various rings, the same happens with white gold. When you look at your 9 carats and your 18 carats, still the gold percentages remain the same for 9 and 18 carats. Here you've just got an additional metal, which is palladium. So the reason why palladium is used in your white gold is, first of all, let's start off with saying that white gold is a man-made metal. So it's not from the ground like your normal gold or your yellow gold is. So your palladium, which is roughly 10 to 14%, which is added into your jewelry, if you buy good quality jewelry, that is 10 to 14%, and there's two main reasons for that. That is to increase your melting temperature of the metal, and also it makes the metal white, because palladium is a white metal. And the same is used for 18 carats. There's also about 10 to 14% which is used to create white gold.
So in layman's terms, palladium is added to whiten the metal. And why shall I mention the melting point, why we should be raising it using palladium, is just because the solder that we use to repair rings needs to melt before the ring itself melts. So having a ring that melts at a higher temperature is beneficial to us. Otherwise, if we try and repair a claw or a sizing, we end up melting the ring before the solder even starts to flow. So that is why palladium is added, and that is also why white gold is slightly more expensive than the other gold colors. That is because of the metal palladium that is added.
So in this image you can see the the difference. The very first one on your left hand side is a white gold ring which has been treated with a rhodium plating. Now rhodium, for interest's sake, is about 8 times more expensive than gold. So what you'll see on the rest will indicate 9 carat, 14 carat and 18 carat. Those are white gold rings which have not been treated with rhodium. Your rhodium gives it a, if I can say, a chrome look, as shiny as a nail clippers, for instance. That's absolute brilliance in the metal. That is what rhodium does. Now, rhodium, it will wear off slightly after about a year and a half or 2 years, depending on the wearer and how rough you are with your hands, and also the scale in which your hands come into contact with regarding chemicals. Now, your rhodium plating, it will cost around about, for interest's sake, about 450 Rand every 2 years. So that is roughly a cost estimation of about 22 Rand a month that you put aside for your maintenance on your white gold ring. Now that is what happens, whether it be 18 karat, 14 karat or 18 karat white gold, your rings require a rhodium plating, unless you desire to keep it as is. We can see a slight tinge of yellow coming through, especially when you look at the image or the second ring from the left. You will see it's in its raw form.
Right, so as Charles mentioned with the rhodium plating, there is absolutely zero color difference between 9 karat white gold and 18 karat white gold because it is covered in the same substance. So it's completely irrelevant to what color the underneath is. They will all look exactly the same.
To mention, just before we move on to the next slide, before we go to the platinum, is your platinum, your white gold and your silver will look exactly the same. It's the characteristics that differ. Once again, with the white gold, it's your percentages that differ, and that's about it. Now we're going to be moving on to another white metal, which is platinum. Also a very popular opinion and a choice of metal, which is personally my favorite. I'm a type of guy that likes the whiter metals instead of going for a rose gold or a yellow gold, but that is personal preference.
Before we continue,
Alright.
I see there is a question here that reads, is there any way of knowing if the metal is real and not just plated? I believe that testers don't pick it up. So there is a good way of knowing. Generally, each ring will have a stamp on the inside, or a hallmark, if you call it that. So 9 karat will either be 9 CT, 9 KT, or it will be 375. All of those refer to the percentages of the metal itself, and only that type of ring should have a stamp on it. If you really doubt that the stamp is correct, you can bring that in to us. We have the equipment, it's called an XRF gun. It basically shoots out an X-ray and tests exactly what metal is present. So there isn't a easy way at home to be testing your own rings to see what chemical composition it is, other than looking at the hallmarks inside. So 18 karat would be 18 CT or KT, or then 750, and platinum would either read plat or 950. So those are good ways of having a look at whether your ring is actually a pure metal, or rather a precious metal, or if it is just plated. If it reads 925, that is sterling silver, which has then been plated. If silver is not a silver color, it has been plated, because silver does not have a natural color to it.
Yeah. If that question is coming from the standpoint of being scared that you get fooled, make sure that you use a reputable jeweler. The machinery that we've got is state of the art. So something which the machine, the XRF gun or the nighttime gun, will test up to about 28 metals, and will show you exactly what percentage is present. So that is difficult to test without damaging your ring, because there is another way of testing, which is the acid test. But after you do the acid test on your ring to establish if it's real or not, you will have to bring it in for another cleaning and polishing. But there are ways to do it. Thanks for that question, by the way. I appreciate it.
Perfect. So we're going to move over to platinum, which Charles was busy explaining. Just to quickly touch on that again, platinum is a naturally white metal. It is hypoallergenic, which means you should not be allergic to it. There's very, very, very few people that can be allergic to platinum. So platinum is actually used in the dental industry as well, just because it's so non-invasive to your body. It is a very durable metal, so it is much more dense than gold, which means it doesn't scratch as easily. However, it is not impervious to scratching. So where white gold will have a plating done as Charles mentioned, every year and a half to 2 years, platinum has no plating. It is a brilliant white all the way through. There's no plating that you have to worry about. So if it does ever become a bit dull because of scratches and such, you can just bring it in for a quick polishing. There is no plating involved, and a quick polish should only cost you about 100 to 150 rand. Just a quick buff to get out the lightest scratches. If there are deep scratches, you can have the ring refurbished for closer to about 500 rand. But a fraction of the price to get your ring to look like it did the day that you bought it.
To do a quick cost comparison, is if you're wondering, if you go for a ring which is 9 carats gold, white gold, or 18 karat white gold versus platinum, you will pay on the rough estimate of the general weight of a average ring is around about 2.7 grams to 3 grams. On a platinum versus a 9 carat white gold, you will pay up to about 3,000 rand more. And when it gets to your 18 carats on the same average weight of 2.73 grams, you're looking at less than 1,000 rand difference between your 18 carats and your platinum. Once the ring gets heavier and more metal is used, then your platinum starts to become more expensive than your 18 karat white gold, because you pay per gram, and as Dante mentioned, your platinum is about 45% more dense than your 18 karat gold. So it starts to run away with the price once you go extremely big, a ring such as 11 grams or beyond.
Right, the next metal that we're going to have a look at is silver. Silver is also a naturally white metal, however it is quite a reactive metal. So some people are unable to wear silver, their skin reacts with it very quickly and will turn it pitch black. It is also a soft metal, even softer than 9 karat or 18 karat gold, as a matter of fact. So with silver, you just need to be careful around any chemicals or even just the pH of your skin. Some people just cannot wear silver as it will tarnish. Even non-tarnished silver can tarnish with enough acid on it, basically. So if you ever put silver in what we know as jick or bleach, it will turn pitch black within about 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And the way you get rid of that is just a quick polishing, which will get it off. There are also other chemical cleaners which you can use. Those are generally, they contain sulfur, so it's not the most pleasant situation to be in, as it doesn't smell too pleasant while cleaning your silver jewelry. But in general, silver is much cheaper than the gold and platinum counterparts. However, custom making silver is always going to work out to be quite a bit more expensive than mass manufactured jewelry. So please never compare the price of custom made silver jewelry to that of silver from a flea market. It's not that the one is a better silver than the other, it's just that custom making silver, the labor is round about 8 times more expensive than the metal itself, where mass manufactured jewelry doesn't have that labor cost, because the design is done once and a few thousand of them are made, whereas with custom made jewelry it is only one item that is made and worked on specifically. So just keep that in mind. when making silver is it is a cheaper way to have a piece of jewelry made. However, if you ever are looking to sell a piece of silver jewelry, you won't get much back for it. And that's just because a lot of the costing went into the labor and not the metal itself.
No, I think that's fairly well explained. The next part is a very interesting concept that's quite new, is what you call Mukumi Gane. It's a very interesting ring. I'm actually going to leave it over for Dante to explain. He's got quite extensive knowledge regarding the process of how this is formed and what goes into it to get such a special, or let's call it a unique pattern. Every single ring will differ with its pattern, regardless of how much you try to get the same. It will be impossible.
Well, thank you very much. Before we continue, I would just like to draw your attention to the poll that is up on the live so long. Please, if you are able to answer it, please do so. It does help us with just a bit of feedback and statistics. It helps us plan our next two webinars a bit better. But jumping into Mukumi Gane, it is basically layering of metals. So the combinations can vary. A lot of people will refer to this as Damascus rings, which is not quite correct, as it's a different technique that is used. So there are quite a few different combinations that you can use. The one on screen, you'll see there is black in between. Then there's white gold and rose gold. So the black part is actually silver which has tarnished, or which has been purposefully tarnished to give that contrast. How the ring is made is quite a few layers stacked on top of each other. Then they're clamped together, heated to a certain temperature so that they can start bonding. And then that is hammered together, kind of like a forge. And then the process is repeated, flattened out, folded, and done over and over again until you get all the different layers. You'll see here is an example of the folded pieces of metal. You can see all the different layers in between, and on the right you'll see a completed ring. So the thing about Mukumi Gane is each ring is 100% unique. Even if you use the same thickness of metal, stacked in the same way, just with how pressure works in metals and how they combine, you will never get a ring to look exactly the same as another one. Each pattern is going to be 100% unique. So that is also why it is not the cheapest of options to be looking to make a ring out of. Again, a lot of labor goes into the process to be able to give you such a good ring, basically. This is basically just the metal that has been rolled out into a sheet. So you'll see how the different folds and circles all form. This is still not in its final state. The darker pieces will tarnish further, which will then become black, like the first image. So the next page that we're going to go on to is just a few different cleaning tips in terms of which metals are more prone to tarnishing and need a bit of gentle care to them. So, Charles, can you handle this one, please?
Well, when cleaning a ring, obviously, as the first point mentions, no harsh chemicals should be used. If you do it at home, a DIY way to do it is to put your ring in warm water for about 10 to 15 minutes with sunlight liquid. What that does is to loosen up in most cases, it will be lotion that gets stuck under the ring, or there where the diamond is, where the fine setting is. That gets stuck, whether it be sweat, whether it be dust, food, baking goods, or whether it be lotion most of the time. So your warm water will remove it, and you give it a quick brush with a soft bristle toothbrush, which will then do the job further. You can always bring it in for a professional cleaning, which will cost you quite a few £100, but it will look as good as the day you bought it. To look brand new. And the most convenient way and the cheapest way is doing it at home, as mentioned.
So, as Charles mentioned, coming in for a cleaning is not just for a cleaning. It's also a good time to actually have a look at your claws and basically bring your ring in for a checkup. The checkup is completely free. Basically, we'll have a look at the ring, let you know if there are any problems, what it will cost to prevent further damage. If there is nothing wrong, then your ring is in good standing, cleaned, looks brand new, and it goes home with you that same day. So that is something to look at. We're going to just have a look at how a ring could look. This is now a trilogy ring, an example of 3 stones, and this just gives you a quick overview of the anatomy of what a ring is called. So the part that gets dirtiest the quickest is round about here in the gallery. So under the main stone, or side stones even, that is what causes the stone to look a bit dull. So always be sure to clean in the gallery if you are cleaning at home. Otherwise, as Charles said, bring it in for a professional cleaning and we can make sure it looks proper.
The next is a perfect example of a ring before and after, the results of how it looked after a cleaning. So on the left, the before image is what a ring will generally look like if it's not been taken care of too well. Within a few minutes, literally, you'll have a ring which is almost brand new, and that costs a fraction of the price compared to what you can find out in the market.
Alright, so yes, you'll notice here on the left hand side, right under the stone, very dirty, as we mentioned, that's generally lotion or something that gets stuck. But yes, please do keep your rings clean. That also prevents any damage. Too much of a build-up can eventually start causing reactions within the metal itself and so forth. So it's always best to keep your rings clean. It keeps them looking better, so we can always have your rings looking new. So that tonight was a bit short and sweet compared to yesterday. I know it is a bit shorter, and that is just because there isn't too much more to say about metals. We can get into technicalities, but that would not be of much use to everyone. So if you do have any further questions, we'll keep an eye out on the comment section. I see here is a question from Cheryl. It says, how much gold is lost when it is melted and reused? So with melting and reusing gold, there are thank you for that question. It's actually a very good question. Just to answer that, it really depends on the alloys that are used. Whenever gold is melted, a slag is always formed on the top. So that slag, it can range from, correct me if I'm wrong, but from 3 to 10%.
10 will be quite a bit. You generally would like to not lose more than 5%. Then you know that your metal, which was then brought in to be reused, was in good standing. It was a proper, I don't want to say proper metal, but it was, the components were good. The gold composition was good. If you use more than 5%, that is losing quite a bit, especially if you go over quite a few grams or kilograms.
So just staying on the topic of reusing gold, 18 karat gold is much easier to work with, to reuse in new jewelry. The reason for that is the space allowed for alloys is much smaller. So the discrepancy there between ring A and B would be a much more subtle change. Whereas if we work with 9 carats, we have quite a bit of room to work with alloys, and we don't exactly know which alloy consists in each ring, which means melting them all together can create a strange alloy, some that don't gel very well together. That could cause the ring to become a bit brittle, or even crack once you have made something new out of 9 carats gold.
There's another question,
Continue.
from Hermine. She's asking, is it better to sell your gold and just use that money towards a new ring, or I would assume to use that gold towards making a new item? The short answer is that it's better to sell your gold and use that money as a trade-in on your new item. That's where you don't deal with the complications which Dante mentioned, and not knowing exactly what your ring comprises of, and having a difficulty with the alloys not being standard, which means the possibility of getting a ring which is not really up to standard is most likely going to be the outcome if your own gold is being used.
Perfect. All right. For the moment, we don't see any other questions. We're just going to answer a question that we did get last night after the webinar, which was, is it legal to buy loose diamonds and also loose gemstones? The quick answer to that is yes, you can buy a loose diamond and also loose gemstones. You don't need any certification for that. It's the same as buying a pencil from P&A. However, buying a rough diamond is completely illegal unless you have the right certificates. With the case of raw diamonds or rough diamonds, both the seller and the buyer need to have correct licenses, otherwise the entire transaction is illegal. That is not the case with raw gemstones or rough gemstones. You can have a piece of rough sapphire in your house, absolutely no problem. Tumbled amethyst is generally sold as decorations. So with gemstones, not quite as strict, but with diamonds, owning a rough diamond is very much illegal unless you have a permit or a license to own it.
And that's only in South Africa where it is regarded as illegal, as a matter of interest.
Anywhere else in the world, it will be perfectly fine. All right. I think we will conclude today's webinar just there. Thank you very much for the interaction. It does make it much more interesting for us as well to interact with you. And just a reminder that we will be back here tomorrow at 7 discussing the different design elements. Good design choices, poor design choices, and that's quite an extensive webinar. So if you do have any friends that are looking to have a ring designed, please share this with them that we can also spread it a bit further. That would be great.
Well, thank you once again.
All right, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening.